In the summer of 2024, Napoli stood at a crossroads. The defending champions from the 2022-23 season had plummeted to 10th place in Serie A the following season, their lowest finish in over a decade. The post-Spalletti era was chaotic to say the least. Rudy Garcia and then Walter Mazzarri failed to steady the ship. Confidence was shattered, the dressing room fractured, and fan belief dwindling. Then came Antonio Conte. A serial Serie A winner with Juventus and Inter Milan and a Premier League title at Chelsea, Conte was more than just a manager. He was a statement, a declaration that Napoli would not fade back into irrelevance. This is the story of a tactical renaissance, of redemption, and of how Napoli under Antonio Conte went from mid-table despair to champions of Italy once more. When Antonio Conte walked through the doors at Napoli, he wasn't there to experiment, he was there to impose. The man known for his relentless attention to detail wasted no time in establishing what would become Napoli's new identity. So out went the fluid 4-3-3 of Spalletti. Although Conte has used this formation in numerous games this season, in came the tried and tested 3-5-2 formation Conte had previously used to great success at Juventus, Inter and Chelsea. But for Conte, this wasn't just a simple copy and paste job. This version of the 3-5-2 was tailored for Napoli's unique squad characteristics, infused with Conte's core principles but sharpened by necessity. At its core, the system focused on compactness, transition, speed and verticality. The three centre-backs were instructed to maintain a tight block, pushing wide when needed but never overcommitting. Crucially, the outside centre-backs had license to step into midfield when Napoli had settled possession, overloading the central zones. Meanwhile, the fullbacks or wingbacks in the system were pivotal. They weren't just tasked with hugging the touchline, they were Conte's pressure valves. When Napoli attacked, they surged forwards to form almost a front five, but the moment possession was lost, they snapped back to create a back five, ensuring numerical superiority in defensive transitions. In midfield, Stanislav Lobotka anchored play, acting as the heartbeat, but unlike in the past where he was a metronome for possession, under Antonio Conte, he played a more conservative role. Positionally disciplined, always screening the back line, this would free up the likes of Anguissa or Scott McTominay to push forward, press high and arrive late into the box. Now, this version of Napoli wasn't just about overwhelming possession. Though they still average over 50% possession across the season, it was more about the efficiency. Their expected goals per match increased, while shots faced per game dropped significantly. Defensively, they conceded the least amount of goals in Serie A this season, often forcing opponents into low-value shots from distance. Conte's system wasn't just effective, it was suffocating. The press was coordinated, triggered by passes into wide areas. Napoli were especially dangerous on regains, often scoring within 10 seconds of winning the ball high. This aggressive, calculated pressing, especially on the flanks, forced turnovers and frustrated more expansive teams in the league. Ultimately, Conte didn't reinvent the wheel, he just reminded everyone how ruthlessly effective it could be when every cog spins with purpose. Napoli, under his command, became a machine, and while the goals and headlines would go to the likes of the McTominay or Lukaku, it was his tactical core, the engine Conte built, that powered them all the way to the title. In football, redemption arcs rarely come as beautifully crafted as this. Two players cast aside by Manchester United, labelled inconsistent, limited, even surplus to requirements, found themselves on opposite ends of the pitch, united in a common cause, to resurrect Napoli and themselves. Under Antonio Conte, Scott McTominay and Romelu Lukaku didn't just rediscover form, they defined a championship-winning season. Let's start with McTominay. Signed quietly in the summer for just under £26 million, his arrival barely made any headlines in Italy. Critics called him a runner, a utility man, someone who lacked technical refinement. But Conte saw something different. He saw a weapon, a physical, tactical weapon perfectly suited for his high-intensity midfield engine. Deployed on the right side of a midfield three, McTominay's role was multi-dimensional. He pressed relentlessly, screened the half spaces, and most crucially, he timed his late runs into the box with near perfection. Across the season, he scored 12 goals in Serie A, many in crucial moments. He scored against Inter at the San Siro, delivered the opener in the must-win clash with Juventus, and famously netted the goal of the season against Cagliari, a bicycle kick that sent the city into pandemonium and sealed the Scudetto. But Scott McTominay wasn't just about goals. Whether the team were playing in a 3-4-1-2 or a 4-3-3, his tactical intelligence allowed Napoli to press when out of possession, with him often forming the tip of the triangle in midfield to trigger traps in the half spaces. He was averaging around 2.4 tackles, 1.3 interceptions, and contributed to Napoli leading Serie A in high turnovers that resulted in shots. And in those transitions, waiting up top, was Romelu Lukaku. The Belgian striker arrived amid skepticism. His recent years had been a little bit turbulent, fallout with Chelsea, fitness concerns, a mixed loan spell at Roma, but Conte, who had already built Lukaku into a Scudetto winning machine at Inter Milan, knew exactly how to revive him. The result, a striker reborn in Napoli blue. Lukaku's role was clear: act as the target man, hold the ball under pressure, and either unleash wide runners or bring midfielders like McTominay into play. His combination play with players like Lobotka and Anguissa was underrated, but his link up with McTominay was lethal. Lukaku would end the season with 14 goals and 10 assists, which would place him among Serie A's top forwards in goal involvements per 90 minutes. And then, of course, there is the chemistry. McTominay to Lukaku was the most frequent midfield to striker connection in the league, not just in pass volume, but in goal involvement. One broke forward, the other held up. One ran into chaos, the other dragged defenders out of position. It was the perfect Conte mechanism, two players moving in sync, maximising each other's strengths. Their connection was built on trust, and Conte was the architect of that trust. He gave McTominay the freedom and Lukaku the responsibility. By the season's end, the narrative had flipped. These weren't United outcasts. They were Napoli icons, Scudetto catalysts, and perhaps more fittingly, proof that with the right system, the right manager, and the right motivation, even discarded pieces can become priceless jewels. As the final whistle blew on the last game, Napoli fans flooded the streets, fireworks lit in the sky. After the pain of the previous season, they were champions again, this time forged in Conte's image. Antonio Conte took over a fractured Napoli side and turned them into warriors. Every player had a role, every match had a purpose. This Scudetto wasn't about flair, it was about resilience, execution, and belief. For players like McTominay or Lukaku, it was a personal redemption arc. For Napoli, it was a statement to Italy and Europe: we are back. With that being said, we don't know what will happen next season with Antonio Conte. We'll just have to wait and see. But what you won't need to wait and see is the next episode of Champions Edition, where we'll be taking a look at Ligue 1 champions PSG. So make sure you guys stay locked in, stay tuned, subscribe, share, and like the content. I'll catch you guys soon, man.